we are taught to compromise in almost every part of our life. And she was known for being like, no, like my way or the highway sometimes. And like was still kind and like very warm and wonderful to the people that she knew. I love that unyielding autonomy in women. I think Anya Taylor-Joy also has that. Like there are a lot of women in the industry now that I feel like you see more of that from.
Welcome back to TALNT Cast, everyone. I'm Fatima, and today we're talking about another DCP award for Base Creators Recipient, A Curious Idol. And with us, we have the director and researcher behind it all. Hi, Charlotte.
Hi,
How are you?
I'm good. Thank you for having me. Excited to be here.
Thank you for joining us. I'm very excited to talk about this. I think it's about time. So let's jump right into it. A Curious Idol is a documentary that spans, it's 10 years in the making, about the life of Louise Brooks. And it's the real Louise Brooks, probably not seen before, or at least not to this depth and this kind of personal connection, right? We'll talk about it a little bit more. Specifically, I'm very interested because of how she's kind of been portrayed, talked about, all of that stuff, and you're here to challenge that and be like, "Mm-mm, here's the real Louise Brooks." Walk us through how this started, what at the beginning and the process. How did you come across this? What made you want to do it?
Yeah, so I was in film school. I was going to SUNY Purchase actually for cinema studies. Was really fascinated by silent film history in particular, and German film. So this overlapped very nicely. But I picked up Lulu in Hollywood and read it, and this is the book that Louise wrote. It's sort of a compilation of all of the essays that she's done over time about film, and I was so taken aback by how thoughtful it was and the way that she was. I guess the way that she was seeing the industry despite being in it from the outside, how she was able to discern these patterns and also it's just beautifully written, like very simple, but really there's a lot of depth. And so I just was like, wow, I did not expect this out of an actor. Like nothing against actors, but I didn't expect it out of somebody that wasn't like a specialized writer. And then I read the Barry Paris biography, which is like canon. It is one of the most unbelievable biographies I've ever read in my life. He is an incredible author. I had the rare privilege of interviewing him a couple of years ago, and like I was fangirling so hard. That is the most incredible book, and it has an index that is just packed. Like you can see how much work it took him to compile all of it. And so I think that my journey started there. And I think as a woman, particularly as a woman in film, and just as a woman generally, it's the story resonates, and I think every woman that hears it will feel that way.
Would you say that this is maybe a chicken and egg situation? Did the research come first, or did your desire to make the film come first?
So it actually started as a screenplay, so the research came first. I wrote a whole screenplay, and I was going back and forth with this really wonderful person named Jan Wall about it. He was a friend of Louise's, and I was in college. And I might add, like, when I was doing this, I was such a punk. Like, I knew nothing. And if I could just generally say thank you to everybody that spoke to me, even though I was a punk and knew nothing, and was just like barreling my way through this process in my early 20s, really like crazy. But he would read these for me and he'd come back to me and say like, well, this sort of makes sense, or, this isn't quite it. And then at the time I was living in Rochester, New York. I had moved up there. That is where Louise lived for a very long time. And I was interning at the Eastman Museum. And back then it was the Eastman House. They like made that rebrand while I was there, which is crazy. And I remember watching a lot of films by the Maisels. They were doing a retrospective where they were showing all of their documentaries. And I was so blown away by Gimme Shelter and Salesman. And I thought, this is the most honest way to tell a story. And I was pretty sure, looking at my screenplay, that as somebody that had never met her, I was never going to be able to be 100% on it. Like it was never going to be quite what it could be. And Louise was somebody who was really obsessed with the truth, especially the truth about herself. So the desire to make a film came from a sort of root realization that if I was going to do right by her, it would have to be in that kind of extremely honest format. And I was very luckily upstate where I knew that I could access a lot of the people that had known her. So I just went from there. And that was a phone call actually that I had with Jan while I was working at a Mexican restaurant, like standing there waitressing, calling him and being like, should I just schedule an interview with this woman, or should I just, like, and that's how it started. So I would say research first for sure. And then, when I found out more about who she was, realized this is the only way to tell it.
Yeah. Was there a specific in your research? I mean, 10 years inside Louise's head in a way, indirectly, but in the most intimate way as well, because you've been through personal writings, all of her essays, all of the archives. You've really kind of, as much as one can without it being in person, spent time with her. Was there anything in specific from her journals, from her writings, or from her as a woman that stood out to you and was like, yes, that's what I need to talk about her more. I need to show her?
I mean, there were a million things. That she's such a fascinating person. I think that the thing that I loved the most about the way that she communicated, or I guess I could say the thing I loved the most was the way that she communicated, which was incredibly blunt, but like incredibly understandable. Like, she never seemed like she was putting on airs. She never seemed like she was trying to be something she wasn't. And especially from that time period, I feel like you read a lot of biographies from other actors of the time, and they feel very flowery and like, and it's, giving standard speech. It has that vibe. And she just was not like that. She was speaking like a real human being. And you could tell that every piece that you looked at from her was just like, it's just completely honest. And I mean, like, digging through those archives in terms of like the other things that I noticed about her, obviously like whip smart. And this is somebody who really did not have a significant amount of education. She left home early as a teenager to go dance with Janishon, and then like her career took off from there. But this is somebody who read and annotated the entirety of Proust's volumes numerous times. And somebody who like she taught herself to write, was an avid reader, knew all the classics, like, and when she would pick up on topics and then just dig into them and understand everything about them. And so this was somebody who, she was self-defined as a learner, and that this is something that came later in her life. And I think that realization for me was really powerful, because you very rarely hear stories about women like that,
Yeah.
like they're out there, but it's especially in this industry, like this was somebody who was just so intelligent. And I think the big hallmark on that was like her ability to look at this industry as it was starting to really level its talent. And like the big story about her is that she walked away from Hollywood when they did sound testing, where they said like, we don't know how you'll sound, so we're not going to give you a raise and whatever. And you're gonna have to take a cut. And she said, no, like, exactly how I sound. So that's not it. And you're just doing this to take money from me. And I don't care enough about it to stay. And so she left and went to Germany and made these films with Pabst that are now like iconic silent films that everybody sees in school, and that are like sort of the beginning of a more honest kind of realistic filmmaking. And she also really went out of her way to tell stories about women that were like that. So like Greta Garbo and how she stood up against the studio system. That's something that Louise wrote about. And she was like, this is something that we don't talk about. So it feels good to have that continued chain of events, women speaking up for other women, and telling these stories. But I mean, I encourage anybody who's interested in Louise or in that time period generally, to go to these archives. The archivists are incredible people, and they're very helpful, and they work so hard to preserve these pieces of history. There is no point that I've had in my life that has been more fulfilling than sitting there and going through those artifacts. Like, I think about it every day. It was the best time I've ever had. And I don't care if you're making a film or if you're writing a book or if you just want to do it for fun, go.
I can feel your passion and I can feel your dedication as you're speaking. And the more you talk about her, the more parallels I'm seeing between her and yourself. I mean, she described herself as a learner. I think to be a learner, you have to start everything with curiosity, approach things with curiosity, and then have the dedication and the determination to continue and deep dive. I mean, that's exactly what you've done. So congratulations. Seriously, great job. I think you're doing a fantastic job of not only showcasing her and telling her truth, but also continuing her legacy. I remembered one interview that Anya Taylor-Joy had. Um, yeah, love her. And she had this interview specifically about feminine rage. And she was saying that people mostly expect women to show anger and like a single tear falling down. She's like, no, I want to scream. Let me slap you. And I'm like, yes, thank you. And it made me think of Louise as well. I mean, she was not afraid to show those emotions and not be. Yeah. Tell me more about that.
I mean, for one, I completely agree. And I'm a big fan of feminine rage personally. But I will say, like, Louise is known for being spicy. Like, for not like people would say, like, you never knew what side you were gonna get. And this was, but what I really love about women like that in particular is it's they're not compromising, and that's a positive. Like, we are taught to compromise in almost every part of our life. And she was known for being like, no, like my way or the highway sometimes, and like was still kind and like very warm and wonderful to the people that she knew, but like, just sort of, I love that unyielding autonomy in women. I think Anya Taylor-Joy also has that. Like, there are a lot of women in the industry now that I feel like you see more of that from, and I'm advocating for it every day. Like, Chapel Roan is a great example. It's the same sort of thing where it's like, nope, like, you're not going to talk to me like that. I'm going to let you know how I feel about things. More of this. I think that a big proponent of that, and I understand that I'm not saying anything that anybody else isn't thinking, but Brat, like, that was really a moment. And it's that, like, it was that I'm going to be whoever I want. I'm going to be messy if I want. I'm going to do, like, you're not going to stop me. And I can be incredibly intelligent and still be a party girl. Like, I really feel like that was a shift. And it was, or if it was, perhaps it was picking up on a zeitgeist, which is like this undercurrent of women are sick of being put in one position or needing to be likable or needing to be polite or, having to, even now, like, social media, I feel like has made this even more amplified, where you have to look a certain way, talk a certain way, have all of these, very high standards for yourself.
Yeah.
And I think that we're choosing our own definitions these days, and that's really important. Something that I think is that you're pointing out, and like something that I want to extrapolate on for other filmmakers, particularly young filmmakers. When I started making this, it was in the midst of Me Too and when all of that was blowing up. So I was like, this is so relevant and I have to have it out right now. Like, I have to have this done immediately. And I like funded this on waitressing money. Like, I was paying for college also. And so any other money that I had went into this, and I was like, we're hustling. Like, it was a complete loop. I did not stop working for 2 years, 3 years, maybe, maybe even closer to 5. Damn, it was a long time. But I remember feeling this pressure. Like, if I didn't get it done in that moment, it would fizzle and I would not be able to do it. And I'm just going to say, like, making a film is hard. As an independent filmmaker, it is really hard to get funding for these things, which is why bringing it on chain is so important. It is really hard to get legal representation. And I will say that a lot of the different programs that ask you to make submissions for your films, like the big grants, require you to have a full cut. And that costs money. Like, having a full cut, unless you can cut it yourself, costs money.
Yeah.
And also it's very hard to request that any cinematographer take the time to do that without getting paid up front. It's very, like, you as an artist don't want to ask other artists to do those things. And so sometimes it's going to take way more than 2 years, and it's going to take, like, this has truly taken a decade and it's still not done. And some of that is because my life has taken shifts, like now I am, I'm head of marketing in a VC fund. Like, things have shifted for me, but this has still been the center of my life. And I will say it has not lost its relevance. It keeps coming back. Like, then there's a new thing that it applies to. And so these stories, human stories, particularly in documentary, they are not tied to a time. And for young filmmakers that are trying to figure out how to, like, hustle through these projects, give yourself some space. Like, you have to grow over time with these projects. You have a life too. And like, this is part of living that life also gives you more perspective on the project you're doing. And you're not like, somebody's human story isn't going to stop being relevant. It's only going to get more relevant over time. So I feel like if I had known that when I was younger, I would have enjoyed the process more. And I would have, not that I didn't love it, I loved every second, but I would have felt less pressure to get things done fast. And I would have done things differently, maybe even a little better if I had felt less pressure. If I'm going to suffer, somebody else has to learn from it. That's the thought process there.
You said it yourself. You joked at one point, if only there were NFTs in the 80s.
I've watched the way that blockchain has this sort of ubiquitous magical effect across multiple industries where it can give people that ownership that they really need, and the ability to distribute and have things be more accessible in a way that it just haven't in the past. And I mean, it's pretty easy to look at the traditional film industry and see how blockchain helps that. Like I would say that in my limited experience as an independent filmmaker, a lot of these systems are built for the people that buy the media as opposed to the people that make the media. And so, the fact that DCP has been able to build this decentralized system that incentivizes both sides, I think is really impressive. And it allows artists to feel like they can be a part of their art while still profiting from their art, which can be really hard initially in the beginning, and still find a community of artists that, are also interested in what they do. The ability to look at all these really cool projects on that platform was awesome. Like that, I love that. I can say that the patterns that I have seen based on the things that I've looked at, like the concept of decentralization, I don't think would be something that's lost on anybody with the kind of mindset that she had. And for the filmmaker aspect, like when I look at the way, like how difficult it's been to get my hands on some of the footage that I need, or, like to be able to distribute some of these things without immense copyright worry. And like, there's a reason things are copyrighted, right? Like it makes sense. And I mean, I could say a lot of things about that right now, particularly in the age of AI. This is very complicated, and particularly around like ownership rights for people like Louise, where now they're deceased and it's very hard to protect that copyright, and that can become very complicated very fast, and can be a severe negative for the person impacted. But I think that like the concept of somebody wanting to protect their legacy so strongly and to make sure that none of it got altered and to make sure that that ownership stayed with her, this would have been a really good use case for that. Like being able to have her research on chain, being able to, like, it's just, there's something that's really great about the legacy protection aspect of smart contracts. And I mean, tokenizing content is obviously a very big thesis that's been kicked around for many years and is now starting to see its peak, I think. Like Zora is a great example of that. And how, base for creators and this concept of like, tokenized content as a whole, it's a really interesting thesis. And I'm curious to see how it impacts this kind of filmmaking as well, where some of this content needs to be distributed on chains so that people can access it, like historical data, things like that. Ownership is important, ownership of your art, ownership of your legacy, and there's something about, the transmutable chain that is, it's an interesting addition to that need. Like, do I fully understand how it would apply? No. Like I understand it from a high level and my own, personal thesis, but I would hesitate to, as somebody that works in an industry that is all about defensibility, I don't know how defensible my thesis is, but I could see how this could be really useful for if it had been, back then and she'd had the ability to protect her content a little more, protect her rights and distribute it in a way that was safer.
We're using this blockchain technology as a tool to be able to solve some of the problems that are in this industry today, right, that have been part of this industry for the longest time. And now we're finding these different ways to retain ownership and to make sure that, so what happens on a blockchain is once something is on this blockchain, it will never be erased. And if this one thing belongs originally to this person, it will say that it belongs to this person originally, no matter how many people might like branch out or take an NFT or own their own like an aspect of it or whatever expansion happens, the source remains the same. And to me, that is so important. I mean, credit where credit is due.
I really feel strongly about, and something that really came clear to me throughout this process of research, is that often Louise's words were taken out of context, or her image was very affected by like the specific male gaze or people's perception. And like, as a result, you would just end up, it was like a game of telephone with her, research and herself. Like, you would just end up with different transmutations as you went down the line. And there was a point when she was known as being, I'm pretty sure, like the most famous dead celebrity on the internet, which is a weird title to be holding. But like, that's the amount of distribution that she was seeing through these different forums and platforms. And just, it felt like there was no source of truth in some of these instances, or if there was one, nobody bothered to go look at it. And so I think that is an interesting use case for blockchain on this. Like, it's just, like, where's the core? And I mean, like, the other thing is, I just generally on the blockchain thesis, in this country, it's still seen very much as a number go up asset, like capital gains. And that's like what we care about. And, in other parts of the world, it is truly a powerful democratization tool. And I think that it can have that same effect on the film industry here, where it is just distributing the power a little more evenly and then adding accessibility, which is so important. I mean, like, especially when, as somebody that's gone to try and access some of this footage, like, it can be thousands of dollars to access a minute of it because it's owned by one company. And like, or a lot of these pieces of footage end up getting sort of monopolized within very specific verticals. And so like, I that is something that I think is crucial. Like, blockchain for that sort of democratization is crucial.
You've also mentioned in your pitch when you first submitted that you're planning hopefully on distributing both traditionally but also on chain. Does this kind of hybrid approach, has it taught you anything, both as a filmmaker and as a woman, managing and navigating your own kind of creative landscape?
I mean, so I haven't done it yet. So in terms of like the actual like full distribution, I don't know what it will look like. And I will say, like, a lot of these, in my experience, which is again like limited, it is very hard to barter for rights on these things when you're working with traditional distributors. And so I remember having a couple of places send over outreach, like, with interest of doing that. And I started to look at the terms and I was like, like, this is complicated. And so I like the idea of being able to have it on chain strategy for that purpose. And also, like, this is a very personal view on this, and it's not that people shouldn't like, I don't have a profit first thought process on this film. Like, I was never like, this wasn't something where I thought, I'm going to publish this and I'm going to make a lot of money on it. Like, no. I don't really, it's not that wouldn't be nice, but it's not like the driver for me. And what is more important to me is that the story gets in front of as many people as possible. I do like the idea of owning my content, because those things can get, things can get twisted in the same way that I've seen other pieces of content get twisted. Like, I would go digging through these archives to find these things, and then people would post them in other places, which I was okay with, but they would put incorrect information on there. And then I'd be like, just reference it, like, just go back, just look at it, like things like that. So ownership is important as well. And doing that on chain is helpful in that it protects my rights. But at the end of the day, like, this story isn't my story, it's her story. And so it's just whatever the best way to get her story out there is what's most important to me.
Beautiful. I don't know if you've heard, but Decentralized Pictures is working on a new streaming platform that will be on chain called DCP Plus.
I did not know that. That's very exciting.
Very exciting. We are so excited about that because honestly, I truly believe it will be a game changer. It's a streaming platform. When you work it, it looks like Netflix or Amazon, and it's just very, accessible and familiar on the kind of the front facing, right? And then it's fully and entirely built on chain. We have all of the benefits of blockchain technology, the smart contracts, all of the the tools to protect and to genuinely actively put agency back in the hands of creators. We have a couple of little tools as well, specifications that's meant to help filmmakers that upload their content to DCP Plus with their marketing, with their kind of knowledge in the system, things like that. We really do believe in this mission, and we are putting actual, walking the walk, not just talking the talk. And hopefully that will be live in the next quarter, hopefully 2026, sometime around. It's near. And I know that, yes, I'm super excited. I will definitely be waiting, hopefully, for a Curious Idol to be on DCP Plus.
I would happily, please. That is a dream come true. Thank you for telling me about it. There's actually one more piece of the story that I'm tracking. And so there might be more. So I'm trying to see what I can do about that first before I, fully dive into the legal side of things. I've had a couple of conversations with lawyers, obviously, about what it looks like to obtain copyright, which has been the biggest blocker. It's like, how do you get enough money to handle that, which is although it's not a significant amount of money, it's like hundreds of thousands of dollars, and just things where you want to be able to get the best legal representation that you can. You want to be able to make sure that you are in a position to leverage this footage in a way that is respectful and in a way that is, you want to make sure that everything's tied up in a bow. But I have one more piece I think I need to capture. It has been really such an honor to be able to partake in any of this. And thank you so much for choosing my film, because that made me really happy. And it's given me, more of an incentive to push it forward as well while all this other stuff is going on. And when I thought oh, should I, try and go film this thing? And should I go? And now I'm like, yes, I definitely should. So it's
Absolutely.
really.